$200. That's what it cost Caitlin Clark to say what everyone was thinking. 3 words on Instagram. Refs couldn't stop us. The league sent her a bill. She laughed about it. Clark posted a screenshot on social media with crying laughing emojis, saying she got fined $200. But here's what made it different. She didn't back down. She promised her bench mob would be even more rowdy tomorrow. This wasn't an apology. It was a promise. The Indiana Fever had just done something most people thought was impossible. They beat the 3rd-seeded Atlanta Dream in 3 games to advance to the semifinals for the first time since 2015. And they did it without their biggest star. Clark was sidelined for the playoffs with a groin injury. But sitting on that bench, watching her team fight through every whistle, every contact, every moment that felt just a little too physical, something broke inside her. Game 3 came down to the final seconds. Aaliyah Boston made the game-winning layup with 7.4 seconds left. Lexi Hull stole the inbounds pass. The Fever won 87-85. Chaos. Pure chaos. Bodies on the floor. Players screaming. The bench erupting. And Clark, unable to play but refusing to stay silent, went to Instagram. Her comment was simple, direct. Refs couldn't stop us. Then she added, elite bench mob. Because that's what they were. A group of injured players, reserves, and believers who wouldn't let anyone tell them they didn't belong. The WNBA didn't like that. This was the second known case of a player or coach being disciplined for comments about officiating during the 2025 playoffs. The minimum fine is $200. Clark got the minimum. It meant this was her first offense. But the message was clear. Don't talk about the refs. But everyone was talking about the refs. Las Vegas Aces coach Becky Hammon called the Fever Dream series a football match, where bodies were flying the whole time and it made for very ugly basketball. Hammon said some of the hits she saw would get someone arrested if they happened on the street. This wasn't just Clark being dramatic. This was a problem everyone could see. Hammon added that the players are incredibly skilled and that should be highlighted, questioning if refs get a bonus for not calling fouls in the playoffs. Even coaches from other teams were watching this series and thinking the same thing. Something felt off. Look at the numbers from Game 3. The Fever were whistled for 14 fouls compared to 22 for the Dream. Indiana shot 24 free throws while Atlanta only got 11. So technically, the calls went Indiana's way. But that's not what it felt like on the court. Both teams battled serious foul trouble all series long. The game was stop and start. Physical. Brutal. Clark's teammate Sophie Cunningham joked she would start a GoFundMe to help pay the fine. The humor masked something deeper. Cunningham had already been fined multiple times for criticizing referees, including a $500 fine for a July TikTok post and a $1,500 fine for comments on her podcast in August. This wasn't new. Players had been trying to speak up all season. During the first quarter of one game, Clark and Cunningham made a dramatic gesture to officials, protesting that a Dream player should be called for traveling. Even from the bench, they couldn't stay quiet. Cunningham later said the refs had not been protecting the star player of the WNBA for a couple years now, and at the end of the day, she was going to protect her teammates. The next day at practice, something beautiful happened. Clark yelled at reporters from the other side of the gym to check her tweet. She wasn't embarrassed. She was proud. $200 to say the truth felt like a bargain. This was bigger than one fine. It was about a league struggling to find its balance. The WNBA was exploding in popularity. More eyes watching. More pressure mounting. And with that growth came more questions about how the game was being called. The Fever were heading to the semifinals to face the Las Vegas Aces. 5 Fever players were dealing with season-ending injuries. The odds were stacked against them again. But Clark and her bench mob weren't interested in odds. They were interested in making noise. $200 bought the league silence from some players. But it bought defiance from Caitlin Clark. She wore that fine like a badge. She promised the bench mob would be even more rowdy. Not quieter. Louder. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to pretend everything is fine when it's not. Sometimes standing up costs something. And sometimes, that cost is worth every single dollar. The Fever weren't supposed to be here. They lost their star player mid-season. They scraped and clawed through every game. They faced a dream team that was better on paper. And they won anyway. Clark's Instagram comment wasn't disrespectful. It was honest. Refs couldn't stop us. They tried. The whistles came. The contact was allowed. The game got physical. But Indiana kept playing. They kept fighting. They kept believing. And when the final buzzer sounded in Game 3, when Boston made that layup, when Hull stole that pass, it proved something undeniable. Heart doesn't need a whistle to win. Belief doesn't wait for permission. And sometimes, the team that refuses to quit is the team that refuses to be stopped. $200. Caitlin Clark paid it with a smile. Then she promised to get louder. That's not just a fine. That's a statement. That's what happens when you try to silence someone who's already decided they won't be quiet. The refs couldn't stop them. The fines couldn't either. And that's the story no one saw coming. A bench player with an injury and a smartphone became the voice of something bigger. A reminder that even when you can't play, you can still stand for something. What do you think really happened in that series? Was the officiating fair, or did it cross the line? Should players be allowed to speak their minds without getting fined? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This story isn't over. The Fever's playoff run continues, and something tells me Caitlin Clark isn't done talking yet.